As a company, we talk about inclusive stakeholder management. Of course, we're a public company. We want to be successful for our shareholders.
Harley Davidson has long been an emblem of American freedom, its iron horses thundering down highways from coast to coast. Under the stewardship of Jochen Zeitz, the company had embarked on an ambitious transformation, diversifying into electric motorcycles and nurturing a renewed sense of community among riders. Yet, as of late, the gritty roar of those V-twins has been met with an uneasy whisper inside boardrooms. Rising costs, slumping sales, and mounting debts have conspired to cast a shadow over the motor company's once rock-solid reputation. With the company's financial statements reflecting declines in quarterly revenues and profit margins squeezed to razor-thin levels, Zeitz finds himself at a crossroads. The traditional reliance on high-margin touring bikes is proving insufficient in a market that demands innovation without forsaking the brand's storied heritage. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Compounding these internal struggles, President Trump's newly announced tariffs on trade partners have sent shockwaves through the manufacturing sector. The levies imposed on steel and aluminum imports, intended to bolster domestic production, have had the unintended consequence of inflating the cost of raw materials, forcing American industrial giants to reconsider their global strategies. For Harley Davidson, which sources components from a network of suppliers both domestic and international, the tariffs have translated into a painful double hit. Not only are the steel and aluminum inputs now more expensive, but the retaliatory duties announced by the European Union and other trade partners threaten to erode the company's overseas profits. As developing markets account for an increasing share of Harley's growth pipeline, the barriers to entry erected by these trade measures risk choking off vital revenue streams just as they were beginning to mature. Zeitz, who took the reins with a vision of rejuvenating the brand through sustainability and strategic partnerships, now faces the unglamorous reality of cost-cutting and strategic retreat. A plan once centered around opening flagship stores in Europe and Asia has hit turbulence, as sudden price increases on exported bikes render those initiatives less viable. A Harley that once symbolized aspirational American craftsmanship is now at risk of becoming a luxury that few abroad can afford. In response, the CEO has convened a task force to explore all available options, including relocating manufacturing facilities to jurisdictions with more favorable trade agreements. The prospect of setting up assembly lines outside the continental United States was once anathema to the company's deeply ingrained identity, but pragmatism has begun to outweigh tradition. This strategic pivot, however, is fraught with complexity. The decision to transplant parts of the production process overseas touches on sensitive cultural dimensions. For decades, Harley Davidson's marketing has leaned heavily on a narrative of Made in America, forging an emotional bond with loyal customers who see every mile ridden as an affirmation of patriotism. To shift manufacturing abroad risks alienating that core base, raising questions about authenticity and brand dilution. Moreover, the logistical challenges of establishing new supply chains in foreign countries are enormous. From navigating differing labor laws to securing skilled workers steeped in the art of motorcycle assembly, the transition would demand not only capital investment, but also a delicate orchestration of operational know-how. On the financial front, the burden of debt has become a spotlight of concern. Even before the tariff storm, Harley had been leveraging its balance sheet to fund investments in new technologies, including electric propulsion systems designed to expand its appeal among younger urban riders. Those investments, while forward-looking, have yet to yield significant returns, leaving the company exposed to cash flow pressures. Credit ratings agencies have signaled their unease, downgrading the company's outlook and potentially increasing borrowing costs. If interest expenses rise further, the company's capacity to service debt while maintaining product development and marketing efforts will be severely stretched. Analysts watching the situation warn that the longer the tariffs remain in place, the more difficult it will be for Harley to regain its footing. Even if an administrative carve-out or a bilateral agreement were negotiated in the future, the lure of cheaper production costs abroad might have already reshaped the company's cost structure irreversibly. Competitors who have chosen to manufacture their models in low-cost regions stand to benefit from economies of scale that Harley cannot match if it remains tethered to higher domestic production costs. The CEO's deliberations, therefore, are not merely about survival in the short term, but about preserving the company's competitiveness in a fundamentally altered industry landscape. Meanwhile, internal morale has become an undercurrent of concern. The dealer network that spans thousands of outlets globally has found itself in an awkward position, caught between the parent company's financial retrenchment and riders' expectations for novelty and reliability. Dealers accustomed to rolling out gleaming new models each season are now bracing for tighter allocations and more conservative marketing support. The once frenzied atmosphere of product reveals and demo rides has grown subdued as the company grapples with pricing strategies that must factor in both tariff-related cost increases and the risk of suppressed demand in export markets. For many, the notion that Harley could someday be assembled beyond American borders strikes at the heart of what they have long celebrated. In boardrooms across the globe, investors have begun to question whether the company's storied legacy is enough to weather these storms. Share prices, which had lagged industry averages even before the latest tariff announcements, now exhibit heightened volatility. Institutional investors, attuned to macroeconomic signals, are demanding clarity on the path forward. The CEO's presentation in the coming months will be scrutinized not just for its financial projections, but for its articulation of a coherent long-term vision that reconciles heritage with globalization. Failure to assuage these concerns could spark a management shakeup as activist shareholders press for cost restructuring and strategic realignment. Zeitz's reputation as a steward of sustainable business practices adds yet another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. His championing of environmentally conscious manufacturing processes and the launch of electric models had earned him accolades in boardrooms and beyond. Yet, these same initiatives require significant capital and a tolerance for near-term losses in exchange for potential future gains. The tariffs, by elevating input costs, threaten to undermine the economic rationale for such investments, forcing a difficult calculus between preserving green initiatives and safeguarding the company's financial health. Zeitz's challenge is to demonstrate that the pivot towards sustainability remains viable even in an environment of rising costs and shrinking margins. The potential for relocation to lower-cost jurisdictions offers a glimmer of relief, but it is no panacea. Countries with which the company could strike advantageous trade agreements often come with regulatory environments that differ markedly from the U.S. Those differences might affect everything from environmental compliance standards to worker safety regulations, areas in which Harley has historically held itself to high benchmarks. Ensuring that overseas facilities adhere to the company's rigorous standards would require robust compliance mechanisms and could erode some of the cost savings. Additionally, the optics of moving production to countries with less stringent labor protections could clash with the company's professed values, inviting scrutiny from both employees and advocacy groups. For international riders who have eagerly awaited new model releases, the specter of increasing prices looms large. In key markets such as Europe and Asia, where middle-class incomes are rising but still trail those in North America, even modest price hikes can dampen demand. If Harley's bikes become prohibitively expensive due to tariffs, or if the company elects to absorb some of the increased costs at the expense of profit margins, the brand's allure could wane. Zeitz's task force must therefore weigh the trade-offs between passing costs onto consumers, which risks depressing sales volumes, and preserving affordability, which could further erode financial performance. Inside the company's engineering and design studios, the uncertainty has prompted introspection. Designers who once experimented freely with bold aesthetics and pioneering technologies now find themselves constrained by cost imperatives. Prototypes that had promised to push the envelope on performance or sustainability have been shelved, while resources are reallocated to prioritizing core product lines. This retrenchment, if prolonged, could dull the company's creative edge, weakening its ability to surprise and delight riders with breakthrough offerings. The very essence of the Harley experience, the fusion of visceral performance and distinctive design, could be placed in jeopardy by back-office decisions driven by tariffs and cost-cutting mandates. On the other hand, crisis can breed innovation. Some within the organization view the challenges as an opportunity to streamline operations and sharpen the brand's focus. The prospect of relocating production has spurred cross-functional collaboration, as sourcing, manufacturing, legal, and marketing teams work in concert to map out scenarios that could yield sustainable competitive advantages. For instance, Forging partnerships with regional suppliers and leveraging digital manufacturing technologies might reduce lead times and allow for greater customization. Whether these initiatives can offset the impact of tariffs remains to be seen, but the fresh energy they have injected into certain corners of the company underscores the indomitable spirit that has defined Harley for more than a century. Amid this swirl of strategic deliberations, the symbolic resonance of the motorcycle itself has never been stronger. For riders, the brand represents more than metal and gasoline. It embodies a way of life defined by freedom, adventure, and camaraderie. The possibility that the next generation of Harleys could bear labels indicating assembly in distant lands has become a rallying point for those who fear the erosion of an authentic connection. Zeitz, aware of the emotional stakes, has engaged in dialogue with key stakeholders, dealers, veteran riders, and brand ambassadors to gauge their sentiments and integrate their perspectives into decision-making. The company's future will hinge not only on spreadsheets, but on the preservation of a collective identity that transcends borders. International trade policy, often relegated to the abstract realm of tariffs and treaties, has thus become deeply personal for the Harley Davidson community. Every increase in import duties reverberates through the lives of riders who cherish the ritual of packing for a cross-country journey, of joining local chapters for weekend rides, and of sharing stories around campfires at rallies. The tariffs have jolted the realization that a shift in government policy can ripple through an ecosystem of enthusiasts, touching metalworkers who craft custom parts, mechanics who fine-tune engines, and restaurateurs who cater to post-ride gatherings. The economic calculus, while daunting, must be balanced against these human dimensions that form the bedrock of the brand's enduring appeal. As the deadline for potential relocation decisions approaches, stakeholders across the spectrum brace for a verdict that will define the company's trajectory for years to come. Local communities in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, where Harley plants have long anchored regional economies, watch nervously as discussions of overseas assembly gain momentum. The prospect of job losses and reduced economic activity in traditional manufacturing hubs casts a pall over towns that have self-identified with the vibrations of Harley engines for generations. Zeitz's team must grapple not only with markets and margins, but with the social responsibilities of stewardship, recognizing that every strategic choice carries repercussions far beyond corporate boardrooms. In this high-stakes environment, nimbleness and transparency are paramount. Zeitz has pledged to communicate candidly with employees and dealers, acknowledging the gravity of the decisions ahead while emphasizing the necessity of preserving the company's viability. The company's ability to navigate this tumultuous period will rest on its capacity to harmonize the competing demands of cost management, brand integrity, and stakeholder trust. Failure to strike that balance could invite deeper financial distress, whereas success could solidify Harley's position as a resilient icon capable of adapting to a shifting global landscape. The convergence of internal financial strain and external trade headwinds has created a defining moment for Harley Davidson. The choices made in the coming months will test the company's resolve and ingenuity, whether through selective relocation, operational efficiencies, or recalibrated growth strategies. The imperative is clear: to ensure that Harley's legacy of freedom and self-expression endures. Jochen Zeitz, at the helm of this storied institution, faces a labyrinth of trade barriers, cost pressures, and emotional bonds. His stewardship now hinges on forging a path that honors the brand's past, equips it for the present, and positions it for a future in which the open road remains a symbol of boundless possibility for riders everywhere. Global shifts in consumer behavior now amplify the pressures on Harley Davidson. Younger riders, whose tastes are shaped by urban sensibilities and environmental concerns, are less inclined toward the large displacement gasoline engines that have been Harley's hallmark. They gravitate instead toward nimble, efficient machines, often electric, that mesh with congested cityscapes and align with a broader commitment to sustainability. In response, Zeitz's leadership team had already charted a course toward electrification, debuting concept models that generated real excitement. But bringing such vehicles to market requires capital and manufacturing flexibility. The tariffs, by inflating raw material costs and subjecting exported units to heavy duties, have thrown the timing and feasibility of those launches into jeopardy. Riding the wave of millennial and Gen Z consumer trends now feels precarious as the company scrambles to retool factories and refine battery technologies under a constrained budget. Simultaneously, Harley's financing arm, which facilitates loans and lease packages for customers, now faces its own set of risks. A downturn in unit sales abroad translates directly into reduced loan originations, squeezing interest income at a time when higher input costs have already compressed profit margins. Dealers, aware of tighter financing spreads, are growing cautious in their promotional efforts, fearing that aggressive discounts could further erode profitability. This risk-averse stance among the dealer network has a domino effect on consumer demand, particularly in markets where Harley has little brand legacy to fall back on. The company's captive finance subsidiary, once a growth engine supporting aspirational purchases, thus finds itself contending with the broader malaise afflicting the parent company. Beyond the balance sheet, the specter of protectionism has sparked an urgent dialogue within Harley's public affairs division. The company's Washington office, long accustomed to lobbying for favorable motorcycle regulations and road safety initiatives, has pivoted to engage trade policymakers in a bid to carve out exemptions or secure alternative arrangements. Meetings with legislators and testimony at congressional hearings now revolve around the unique nature of motorcycles as not merely consumer goods, but cultural artifacts with outsized economic and symbolic importance. Yet, as debate over trade policy intensifies on Capitol Hill, Harley's pleas compete with myriad other industry voices advocating for relief. In the absence of a clear policy win, the company's prayers for a reprieve from punitive duties may go unanswered, leaving relocation as the most tangible lever to pull. The potential for overseas assembly also raises intricate questions around intellectual property and proprietary manufacturing processes. Harley's once guarded assembly techniques, meticulous torque standards, precise engine break-in procedures, and specialized paint finishes have long been traded with partners under strict confidentiality. Extending such know-how to new facilities in lower-cost regions requires robust legal frameworks and trust in local management. Any misstep could compromise product quality or allow competitors to glean insights into Harley's technology. The legal and operational due diligence needed to safeguard trade secrets would thus become a central pillar of any relocation plan, adding layers of complexity and cost to the enterprise. Currency fluctuations further complicate the landscape. A weaker dollar, which can sometimes serve as a boon by making American exports cheaper, has in recent weeks been offset by the tariffs' dampening effect on global demand. At the same time, currencies in potential host countries, ranging from euro to yen to emerging market rupees, have exhibited erratic movements in response to shifting trade rhetoric. As Zeitz and his financial chiefs model various scenarios, they must account for swings in exchange rates that could either cushion or exacerbate the cost of local operations and repatriation of profits. Hedging strategies, while available, add layers of financial instruments that carry their own fees and counterparty risks, drawing resources away from core R&D and marketing investments. Institutional investors, ever attuned to such macroeconomic crosscurrents, have ratcheted up engagement with Harley's board. In recent earnings calls, analysts pressed Zeitz on his vision for a post-tariff world and demanded transparency on the feasibility studies for alternative manufacturing footprints. Questions about capital allocation, whether to fund electric vehicle production, share buybacks, or debt repayment, have spotlighted the tension between near-term shareholder returns and long-term strategic revitalization. Some hedge funds, smelling potential volatility, have taken short positions in Harley's stock, betting that continued trade headaches and execution missteps could drive the share price lower. The optics of a battered share price, in turn, heighten pressure on the board to consider radical options, from joint ventures with foreign partners to outright asset sales of non-core divisions. Meanwhile, competitor movements offer both cautionary tales and potential blueprints. European brands like BMW and Ducati, which maintain manufacturing sites within the EU, benefit from tariff-free access to intra-block markets, giving them latitude to price competitively and invest in localized marketing. Japanese giants Honda and Yamaha, with sprawling plants across Asia, leverage regional supply chains that insulate them from the U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs. Their ability to shift production volumes to match demand fluctuations underscores the strategic value of geographic diversification. Some of these competitors have quietly expanded capacity in Mexico, exploiting NAFTA-era, now USMCA, provisions to minimize tariff exposure. Harley's inability to mimic such agility has underscored its vulnerability. In the face of these pressures, a concept has gained traction within Harley's strategic planning cell: the global microfactory. Rather than transplanting large-scale production lines overseas, the company could deploy smaller, highly automated facilities capable of assembling critical components, frames, engines, electronics modules in proximity to target markets. Final assembly could then occur regionally, cutting down on cross-border freight and import duties. Such a distributed manufacturing model, fueled by robotics and advanced digital monitoring, promises cost efficiencies and supply chain resilience, but rolling out microfactories requires upfront investment in cutting-edge automation and skilled technicians, potentially diverting funds from other priorities. Zeitz and his leadership must weigh the costs of such pioneering infrastructure against the promise of reduced trade exposure. Parallel to these manufacturing deliberations, the company's brand and marketing teams face their own conundrum: how to sustain the mythos of Harley Davidson, while acknowledging that the literal birthplace of future models may lie in places like Thailand or Poland. Storytelling around motorcycles has long dwelt in the realms of mythic Americana. Endless highways, dusty rallies, leather-clad riders forging bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. Translating that narrative into an age of globalized production demands a nuanced approach that stresses craftsmanship and design as universal values, rather than purely American ones. Campaigns celebrating the global brotherhood of riders might soften the blow, positioning Harley Davidson as a brand that, while American in spirit, draws strength from diverse cultural roots. Yet, this recalibration risks diluting the brand's core identity if not executed with authenticity. The ripple effects of potential restructuring also extend to supplier relationships. Harley's network of specialized vendors, machinists crafting camshafts, foundries forging engine cases, leatherworkers stitching seats, constitutes an ecosystem finely attuned to the demands of customized, low-volume production. Establishing equivalent vendor networks in new jurisdictions entails scouting for partners with matching quality standards, auditing their processes, and negotiating contracts. Many small-scale suppliers reliant on Harley's business may struggle to expand capacity or certify to the company's exacting benchmarks, creating a lag between the startup of new facilities and full-volume production. To bridge this gap, Harley may need to invest in supplier development programs, offering technical assistance and shared capital expenditure, a further drain on resources. In the realm of technology partnerships, Zeitz has long championed collaborations with emerging players in battery science and software development. These alliances aim to fuse Harley's taste for visceral, connected riding experiences with the demands of a digital age. App-based diagnostics, over-the-air software upgrades, and integrated rider assist features. But tariff-driven budget constraints could force a narrowing of these partnerships, privileging only those with the most immediate promise of revenue-generating products. The resulting slowdown in technology adoption risks positioning Harley behind rivals who are pioneering integrated electric and even autonomous two-wheeler concepts geared toward urban mobility. At corporate headquarters in Milwaukee, the tone in executive corridors has turned decidedly more cautious. Conference rooms that once hosted jubilant unveilings of concept bikes now serve as war rooms where cost reduction initiatives compete for scarce resources. Vice presidents responsible for global sales, human resources, and sustainability initiatives are asked to produce contingency plans that outline how their functions will adapt to a smaller, leaner organization. The culture of optimism that Zeitz once fostered, rooted in the promise of a renaissance driven by electrification and brand experiences, has had to make space for sober evaluations of what the company can and cannot afford. Yet beneath the sobering figures and high-stakes strategic debates lies a bedrock of resilience. Harley's culture of deep engagement with its riders has given rise to grassroots movements that could support creative solutions. In markets where Harley clubs organize volunteer events and rallies, local chapters have expressed willingness to collaborate on shared assembly or distribution initiatives. In some emerging regions, riders have proposed converting underutilized warehouse spaces into assembly hubs, staffed by trained volunteers and supported by pop-up financing schemes. While far from a polished business model, Such grassroots ingenuity underscores the brand's capacity to galvanize communities in pursuit of survival. On the recruitment front, the company faces challenges in attracting talent capable of steering a strategically nimble, digitally enabled manufacturing operation. Engineers versed in electric powertrains, robotics specialists, and supply chain analysts are in high demand, and they command premium salaries. Harley's traditional appeal to mechanics and designers enamored of chrome and combustion may not resonate with this new cohort. A cultural shift toward technology and agility is necessary to signal to prospective hires that Harley is not merely resting on its historic laurels, but is committed to forging the future of riding. Employer branding efforts have begun to highlight stories of young engineers working on next-generation models, yet these campaigns require funding and organizational bandwidth precisely when both are in short supply. Amidst these contending pressures, one of the most profound challenges is the management of uncertainty itself. Executives must balance the need for decisive action, be it legal incorporation of new plants abroad, renegotiation of supplier contracts, or approvals for capital expenditures, with the imperative to avoid lock-in around a suboptimal solution. A misplaced bet on a single foreign jurisdiction could saddle the company with political risk, currency exposure, or inadequate infrastructure. Conversely, a protracted deliberation that delays any shifts in production might hand irrevocable advantages to competitors who have already optimized their cost structures. The art of leadership lies in making timely decisions under ambiguity, calibrating boldness with prudence. Looking outward, the broader motorcycle industry is undergoing parallel evolutions. Electric two-wheeler startups in Europe and Asia are growing rapidly, supported by government incentives and millennial consumer enthusiasm. Urban mobility platforms in India and Southeast Asia have experimented with subscription-based electric scooter services that combine ease of access with environmental stewardship. As Harley considers its future, it must reckon with the possibility that its premium-priced big-bore machines could become an anachronism in markets where affordability and eco-consciousness drive vehicle choice. To remain relevant, the company must nurture a product portfolio that spans traditional heavyweight cruisers, mid-size motorcycles, and fully electric urban models, each aligned with specific regional market demands. Trade policy, for its part, remains an amorphous force. The administration's tariff posture could shift with political winds, especially as domestic industries lobby for carve-outs or Congress asserts its authority. Harley's fate therefore depends not only on corporate agility, but on the vagaries of government negotiation. Should a bilateral or multilateral agreement emerge that eases duties on manufactured goods, the calculus for relocation might flip, making domestic production suddenly more attractive. Zeitz and his team must build flexible processes that allow for rapid scaling of U.S. output if political winds reverse, even as they forge ahead with contingency plans for overseas assembly. In the final analysis, the crucible facing Harley Davidson is as much strategic as it is financial. The company's leaders must chart a course that reconciles three imperatives: to honor the brand's heritage, to satisfy a diversified global customer base, and to navigate an unpredictable geopolitical environment. This requires transcending conventional trade-offs and instead pursuing a dynamic portfolio of initiatives, some aimed at immediate cost mitigation, others at long-term transformation. The path forward may involve a hybrid manufacturing footprint, a recalibrated market segmentation strategy, and an infusion of technology partnerships that unlock new revenue streams beyond motorcycle sales, such as digital services and experiential events. Through it all, the company's most treasured asset, its community of riders, remains the lodestar. Harley Davidson's destiny will ultimately be written not solely in balance sheets or factory layouts, but in the roads yet to be ridden, the friendships yet to be forged, and the sense of shared adventure that transcends national boundaries. The challenge posed by tariffs and financial distress, while formidable, may also catalyze a reinvigoration of the brand's founding ethos: to break barriers, to embrace the journey with courage, and to seek freedom in the open road. As the engine's rumble gives way to the hum of electric motors and the contours of global assembly lines, Harley's story is being rewritten in real time, a narrative of adaptation, resilience, and the unyielding pursuit of what lies beyond the horizon. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, What are your thoughts on Harley Davidson's financial issues? Will moving abroad help them? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.